Have you ever looked at a mountain so vast, so imposing, that it felt like it was staring back at you? Pakistan is home to some of the world's most breathtaking peaks, like K2 and Nanga Parbat, the killer mountain. Climbers from all over the globe are drawn to their beauty and challenge. But what many don't know is that these mountains hold secrets, stories whispered down through generations by the locals who live in their shadows. They speak of ancient spirits and strange occurrences, tales that are often dismissed as folklore. But sometimes, folklore has a way of becoming terrifyingly real. Tonight, I want to share a story, one that comes from a seasoned trekker who learned that some mountains are best left undisturbed. Our story begins with a man named Usman, an experienced mountaineer who had conquered peaks across the Himalayas. For him, the mountains were a second home. But there was one range he hadn't yet explored, a remote, seldom-traveled cluster of peaks in the northern regions of Pakistan. Locals called it the Sleeping Giant, and they advised outsiders to stay away, speaking in hushed tones of a guardian spirit that protected the valley. Usman, being a man of logic and experience, dismissed these as superstitions. He saw an untouched paradise, a challenge waiting to be met. He hired a local guide, a quiet, weathered man named Kareem, who agreed to take him, but not without a solemn warning. "We respect the mountain, sir. We do not anger it." They set off in the early morning, the air crisp and clean. The first few days were incredible. The landscape was raw and stunningly beautiful, with turquoise rivers cutting through deep valleys and eagles soaring high above. Usman felt a sense of pure freedom, documenting everything with his camera. Kareem, however, was different. He was always watchful, his eyes scanning the ridgelines. He would often stop to murmur a quiet prayer or leave a small offering of dried fruit on a rock. Usman found it charming, a part of the local culture, but didn't give it much thought. The further they went, the more the feeling of being in a pristine wilderness was replaced by something else, a profound, almost unnerving silence. The birds seemed to vanish. The wind, which had been a constant companion, died down completely. It was as if the entire valley was holding its breath. One evening, as they were setting up camp near a glacial lake, Karim seemed particularly on edge. "We are in its heart now," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We must be quiet, no loud noises. No fires after the sun is gone." Usman, a little annoyed by the constant warnings, pressed him for more information. Kareem reluctantly told him the legend of the fairy of the peak. It wasn't a benevolent spirit, he explained. It was an ancient entity, a jealous guardian that mimicked the sounds of lost loved ones to lure people away from their path, leading them to cliffs or into deep crevasses from which they never returned. The legend said that those who heard its call and answered it were lost forever, their voices sometimes joining the eerie chorus on windy nights. That night, Usman was woken by a sound. It was faint at first, carried on a breeze that had suddenly picked up. It sounded like a woman humming a lullaby, a tune that was hauntingly familiar. He sat up in his tent, his heart starting to pound. It couldn't be. The melody was one his mother used to hum to him when he was a child. He hadn't thought about it in years. He unzipped his tent and peered out into the moonlit landscape. The lake was like a mirror, reflecting the jagged, snow-capped peaks. The humming was clearer now, seeming to come from the other side of the lake. He knew it was impossible. They were days away from any village. Karim was fast asleep in his tent. A part of his mind, the logical part, screamed that it was a trick of the wind, his tired brain playing games. But the sound was so real, so full of warmth and nostalgia. It pulled at him a deep primal urge to follow it, to find the source of this comfort in the cold, desolate wilderness. He called out softly, "Hello?" The humming stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then he heard a voice. It was his mother's voice, clear as day. "Usman, I'm over here." "I'm cold." His blood ran cold. He knew it couldn't be her. She had passed away years ago. Yet the voice was perfect. Every inflection, every nuance was exactly as he remembered. It was a cruel, perfect imitation. He felt a tear roll down his cheek. The voice called again, more desperate this time. Please, son, I need your help. Every instinct in his body was screaming at him to go to her, to help her. But Karim's words echoed in his mind. It mimics the sounds of lost loved ones, ... double quotes. He zipped up his tent, his hands trembling. He buried his head in his sleeping bag, trying to block out the sound, repeating to himself that it wasn't real. The voice continued for what felt like hours, pleading, crying, sometimes humming that gentle lullaby. It was the most terrifying night of his life. The next morning, Usman emerged from his tent, pale and shaken. Karim was already awake, packing their gear with a grim expression. He simply looked at Usman and nodded. You heard it, he said. It wasn't a question. Usman, humbled and terrified, told him everything. Karim listened patiently. A mountain tests us, he said. It finds our deepest sorrows and uses them. You did well not to answer its call. Many others were not so strong. He gestured towards a distant ridge, where a series of stone cairns stood against the skyline. We build those for the ones who were lost, the ones who followed the voices. The beauty of the landscape was now gone, replaced by a sense of deep, ancient dread. Every shadow seemed to hide something. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. They packed up and left without another word, moving as quickly as they could. The silence that followed them out of the valley was heavier than any sound. Usman never returned to that valley. He still climbs, but with a newfound respect, a humility he didn't have before. He says the mountains aren't just rock and ice. They have a memory, a spirit. He learned that some places hold a power that we can't understand, and that the greatest courage isn't in conquering a peak, but in knowing when to turn back. The story serves as a chilling reminder. When you're in the great wilderness, surrounded by beauty that feels almost supernatural, listen to the local legends. They are born from generations of experience, from encounters that defy easy explanation. And if you ever hear a familiar voice calling your name in a place where no one should be, remember Usman's story. Don't answer. Just turn back and walk away. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, and some voices are best left unanswered. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. The world is full of mysteries, and sometimes the most beautiful places hide the darkest secrets.